It's hard to deny that there was a direct connection between the rise of Tiki and World War II in the 40s. On this episode of Tiki with Ray, my good friend Sammie Marie comes on the show to talk about what it would have been like to be serving in the military in the South Pacific and what are the key components on what made Tiki so popular after World War II. Hi everyone, this is Ray. As some of you might know me as Tiki with Ray, and today I am in Kirkland, Washington at a place called the Warfront. The Warfront is what would be a military museum of sorts?
No, not so much a museum, Ray. Now, what we do is we're a military shop, so we sell and consign military items from the Civil War all the way up to Vietnam.
Oh, things are for sale here.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Sammie is what would you say, the proprietor of this place? Or?
I'm the manager.
And
the web coordinator. We have two stores, one in Portland and one in Seattle area. Mm-hmm. And so we find good homes for military items, whether you're a collector, a reenactor, or a living historian.
Yeah.
Or just someone that likes to go ahead and be surrounded by beautiful vintage things, but we specialize mostly into the home front life, patriotic items, and military items. That is our solid right there.
What do you mean by the home front life?
So home front is our articles of everyday life. So we're talking about old records. We're talking about jewelry with a patriotic look and feel to it.
Yeah.
We're talking about home decor and things like that, you know.
I think what's interesting, and maybe you would probably know this better than me, but it seems to me like World War II, as far as America was concerned, is pretty much the 40s.
Yes. So World War II started, and very, very late.
Yeah.
41, and then basically spanned all the way up to 45.
Yeah,
so you're talking about almost half of a decade, really.
So half
America.
of a decade, and I'm guessing that life during World War II was definitely connected to the war. It seems like there wasn't very much separation between, like just what you said, the home front and the war itself.
Oh no, everyone was into it. I mean,
yeah.
If you look, for instance, at the World War II era magazine.
Yeah.
And you leaf through it and you see the advertisement. You'll see advertisement for Cadillac that made tank engines. You'll see advertisement for a can of produce of some kind that will say, oh, we switched to this material because we are in the war effort. I mean, Listerine ads with pictures of women kissing GIs, and soldiers, basically.
Yeah.
So everyone was fully integrated into the war effort. The little kids running the street to go ahead and grab scrap metal to go ahead and do some recycling campaigns. I mean, it was everyone, and everything was completely focused towards the war effort. The production kept on going because of women here who had to go ahead and go to work for probably the first time in a long time. I mean, Boeing employed women in the 20s, to go ahead and sew, because at the time, most of the plane, or some of the parts of the plane, were actually made out of fabric.
Yeah.
So, but that was a very rare occurrence. And then all of a sudden, all of these women are back at work, drilling holes, riveting into airplanes, building machine guns.
Wow.
Plants were completely rekitted for the war effort. So Frigidaire could have done machine guns, and so this whole movement just engulfed the entire country into this energetic frenzy to go ahead and produce as much as possible in order to go ahead and supply both, because you have to think about it. We were both, by 44, we were both in Europe and Japan, in the Pacific.
Yeah, the Pacific.
We were in polar opposite ends of the world.
We were fighting two wars at the same time.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I heard is that as far as women's fashion is concerned during World War II is the reason why the skirts got shorter, because there was a ration on material.
That's correct. That's correct.
And supposedly, so since you couldn't have a lot of material to work with your clothes, what was allowed, well, just think, even that idea, the idea of rationing, you know, that you could only use so much of certain things and stuff like that. But supposedly the reason why hats got really, really big with all the ornaments and stuff like that, because it wasn't part of the rationing that you would have to do with the rest of your clothes. Is there a truth to that?
Yeah, there's some materials were more rationed than others. You're talking about cotton, you're talking about plastic, you're talking about just any metal out there. Those were the core component. Wood, even up to a certain extent. Up to a certain extent. So the supplies for these items were so low. I mean, sugar, they produced massive amounts of candy for soldiers overseas. That's where M&Ms come from, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Hershey bars. Those were all candies that were served as part of the rations for the GIs. So there's a whole culture that was born from the war era.
That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's completely different than like anything that we would think of now. I mean, like any of the wars that have gone on over the last, like since I've been alive, like the war in the Persian Gulf, or like it's on the news and you can watch it or whether or not, but like that was it.
I think it's
the only it seems to me like the only thing pretty much was on your mind was the war, because you had a dictator who was actually doing a pretty good job of taking over Europe, and
yeah,
it's kind of scary, and it's something that I don't think any of our generation has had to deal with, and hopefully won't have to.
No, it's an understanding that, well, let's take for instance the situation. You're in 1942.
Okay.
Let's say, for instance,
Yeah.
You're 18 years old.
Yep.
You're an 18-year-old dude.
Okay.
The furthest you've ever been is within 40 miles of where you live. You have 2 radio stations if you're lucky.
Yeah.
You might have access to a good local newspaper or 2.
Yeah.
There's magazines and things like that, but it's not necessarily readily available.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you're in the army and you're shipping out to the Pacific.
Yeah.
How, in your mind's eye, with this scenario in mind, how do you feel? What wonders do you get to see? The first time you see Hawaii.
Yeah.
The first time you're on the Pacific on a ship and there's nothing in sight. A second ago you were in the middle of nowhere.
Omaha, Nebraska.
Basically.
Cornfields or whatever kind of fields are in Omaha.
And then there's palm trees, and you're scared. You're going to war. You know it.
Yeah.
But you have an enemy,
Mm-hmm.
and the government did an excellent job of telling you that that's who you were targeting. The world wasn't as complicated for you.
Yeah.
Than it is today, where you're completely overwhelmed with a million pieces of information, all at the same time that you can't digest. But there's so much of it, your mind isn't as clear and focused as those people were. But then bring us back to Tiki.
Mm-hmm.
What incredible wonders. Can you imagine being in the 40s and coming from the Depression era as a kid, where you had to go ahead and limit everything you were consuming? There wasn't necessarily a whole lot of exposure to exotic lands, and you heard it on the radio. They probably had shows that talked about, faraway lands, and there you are now. You're 20 years old. You've never seen anything like that in your life. And now you're in the army and you're exploring all of that. You get to go ahead and probably have pineapple for the first time. You get to have So it's no wonder that the tiki culture, while it was a cool thing in the 30s, suddenly you're hitting mainstream. Bam! These boys that had never seen anything like that before get a taste of exotic lands, tiki, and all of that flavor. It's incredible to go ahead and think about it. And I think that probably is the most exciting time for tiki, when when it suddenly hits people that don't have the means to travel, don't have that flair for the unusual. They're like you and me, and they just all of a sudden get exposure to it. What do?
You live it up as much as you can, I suppose.
Yes, because you don't know if you're gonna be there tomorrow.
Yeah.
You do not know that. That's intricately true. You do not know if you're gonna be there tomorrow, and you're 20 years old, and you're gonna live your life, and you're gonna drink those drinks, and you're gonna go ahead and meet those ladies, and there's just gonna be never-ending party. That's one of the things that's the most beautiful about people that live that era, is that they know what it's like not to know if you're gonna be there tomorrow.
Wow, that's saying something. That's really, really saying something. Imagine living. Well, even just like even like if you're in the military, like say you're in Hawaii, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Pearl Harbor got bombed. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there were some civilians that got killed.
Yes.
I'm sure there's definitely civilians across this whole war, whether it had been in the European front or in the South Pacific, where like there's a lot of people that died. So you're right. I mean, you don't necessarily need to be a GI, whether or not, wow, I'm going to live tomorrow.
Well, let's talk about Hawaii, because that's probably the introduction, although there are many. I mean, I think that America and we've been obsessed with the Polynesian culture for far before that. I mean, if you look at painters, like Gauguin, for instance, so there's always been kind of this fascination for Polynesian culture. But if you're looking, for instance, at Hawaii, the military was in Hawaii since 1898.
What brought us there?
The Spanish-American War.
Spanish-American War.
We needed a place that was strategically relevant to go ahead and be able to ship things to the Philippines. Yeah. And that was essentially where I'm trying to go out and remember the name of the president, but they established post over there, and that became an American territory. So you had Marine Corps there. The Marine Corps was actually in China even in the 30s. Okay. So they were already practically everywhere. They were in South America as well. But let's go back to Tiki. Yeah. So you're talking about this this culture that's brand new, that's very exotic, but it's not yet readily available to everyone. You know, not everyone gets posted in Hawaii. It's that wasn't the reality. But we were well established, and so as time goes by, you fall into Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor, there were about, I believe, 462 people that died. Only a few civilians, but when you think about it, these people were already well established over there. That affected everyone's lives in a way. Well, the entire continent, in fact. And so we're at that point where Hawaiian culture is already something that's already relevant to the Americans, but it explodes when Pearl Harbor happens. It just becomes this, this symbol of America. And so everyone all of a sudden knows of this tiny little group of islands in the middle of the Pacific. Yeah. And it is by far one of the places that probably America loved and cherished the most, So what else do you want to talk about?
Let's keep talking about Hawaii.
All right. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and cover these.
Yes. What do we have here?
All right. So During an American GI's service, they would have a place called the Post Exchange, which
PX.
is basically exactly PX. You got it.
Yeah.
And so it was very fashionable to send your loved ones, whether it was your mom or your sister
Yeah.
or a pal or a dad even, these pillows, which are called sweetheart pillows. And so this one is from the World War II era. It's one that's basically just a basic Hawaii. Generally, they would have a nice little message on them. This one is just very much so focused on Hawaii. And they would basically send them home to their sweethearts.
Now, you're saying that these are called pillows,
Yeah.
but it looks just more like a banner there. Oh, it is a pillow.
It is a pillow.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. So and it got,
So the technical term is it would be a pillowcase.
it is a pillowcase.
I
But
gotcha. But I'm guessing, did anyone? I'm guessing probably people displayed these, or did they actually like use them as a pillow?
oh, they did. I've seen plenty of those.
Really?
Yeah. So and see, this one is to your mother. Right there. So and they came in just a large variety of them. That was just the rage. That was the thing.
Wow.
Back then. So they would have handkerchief cases as well, and a bunch of other tchotchkes. There's a huge culture of sweetheart jewelry too.
Yeah.
I've gotten a few Hawaiian bracelets where it's just a lovely little bracelet that has the little islands on them, and
Yeah.
then the little destroyers for the Navy. It's beautiful. You guys have to look it up. It's there was millions of these out there. The GIs would just send them back home saying,
incredible.
"Mom, I'm thinking about you from Hawaii." Yeah.
Having a great time.
But the Navy helped so much spreading that whole Tiki culture. I mean,
Yeah.
you might have seen a few musicals treating of that era.
Yeah.
Like for instance,
Well, South
Quiz
Pacific.
Time.
South Pacific.
There we go. Only a very just a very iconic.
And I'm sure that's exactly how it was.
Let's hope not. But we're talking about Hawaii, but
Yeah.
there were so many other places where the GIs went.
Where did they go?
They went to islands like Palau. They went to American Samoas as we know them now.
Yeah.
There was literally thousands of islands where they were on post, and the Philippines was a huge
Real,
place.
thousands of islands?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
They would basically stop and establish small bases or small airfields
Yeah.
on these islands. It was absolutely incredible. So these young men were exposed to hardcore, real Polynesian culture and mingling with the people and getting to know them. And it's for them it was the adventure of a lifetime.
One thing I wonder is, say you were going to go into the service and you're going to go fight. Mm-hmm. Where would you be? Where do you think you would have been better off, going to Europe or going to the South Pacific?
So I've thought about this a few times.
Yeah, because what you're saying is like, well, you're going to war, but you're going to like the South Pacific, and there's palm trees, and there's and it's beautiful, and it's paradise, and on paper you're like, well, Germany or Europe.
Well, you have to remember that if you're coming from Nebraska, you haven't seen Italy or you haven't seen Paris either. But here's the difference, and I've thought about this a lot, and I've talked to a lot of GIs, because I work with veterans also on the side.
Yeah.
And I would have picked Europe, hands down.
Why is that?
Because when you got to Europe, they launched an assault, which was quite brutal.
Okay.
However, once that was over, the locals over there were happy to see them. They all spoke some form of dialect that were understood. so either French or English, or there was civilization. They could go and sleep in buildings. They could, so there were some familiarities about the world that was awaiting them when they landed in Europe. In the Pacific, it was hot. They were on ships for long, long periods of time. The flights for bombers were just absolutely absurdly long.
Really?
They caught diseases. None of the locals spoke the language. It was there. If you're talking going like all the way up to Vietnam, I've talked to many veterans that said that a lot of their clothes basically rotted because it's humid, it's hot, those are hostile conditions that no one is used to. Unless you come from Louisiana in the middle of summer, you don't really know what that's like.
Yeah, that's true. Like real humid. Like I've been to Florida once, and that was the hottest, most humid thing I've ever experienced. And I have a feeling that maybe the South Pacific might be even worse than that. So you're probably right.
Yeah. So there's not as many. You're talking about snakes. You're talking and the Japanese. It's sort of like you have these little islands, tiny little islands all over the place. You have to find the enemy. In Europe, you have a well-traveled road. You know where you're going. There's Berlin. That's
you're talking about jungle warfare is essentially.
Well, not just jungle warfare, but just in general, trying to go out and find Japanese outposts and such. So if I had the choice, which many of them did not.
Yeah, you didn't get a choice. Where do you want to go? Do you want to go Hawaii or do you want to go to Germany?
Exactly. Now they had really nice rehabilitation centers in Hawaii. If you're talking about, for instance, the Marine Corps had a nice place where if you were injured, you would go back there to go ahead and be nurtured back to health.
Yeah.
And that was Camp Maui, which was at the base of Mount Haleakala.
Not bad.
Yeah. So, and there were a few outposts somewhere on islands, a little bit all over the Pacific, where you could go and be nursed back to health if you were injured as well. So these were beautiful places where people had the chance to do a little bit of recreation and get themselves back together. But, as the Pacific was amazing for many of them, and they have incredible souvenirs, but they also have incredible trauma, and it was difficult for them. So war is never an easy thing. It's a complicated matter, and but it definitely opened the world, just like you crack an oyster, for all of these people that had no connection, no access to it. And suddenly found themselves in paradise and hell at the same time.
So what you're saying, Sammie, is Hawaii is a nice place to visit, but you wouldn't want to fight a war there.
Well, we didn't necessarily fight. We fought a day in Hawaii. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
But I mean, Hawaii is a wonderful place that has a rich culture that I'm absolutely in love with. I love Tiki. It's one of, and I think that the 1940s was probably by far one of the epiphany moments for America as a whole, to go ahead and embrace that culture.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you know roughly how many people got sent to the South Pacific to fight overall?
Ooh, I don't have an actual number, but you're talking in the millions.
Or maybe the more important question is how many people came back from the war from the South Pacific? I'm going somewhere with this question, just so you know.
That's a very complicated question. As accurate as the Army wants to be, there's just no real number. I can probably get those numbers, those like hardcore data numbers for your blog if you want after our conversation.
Can you do that right now? I'll wait.
Let me whip out my Google here. Now I can
And I'm sure all the viewers at home don't mind waiting too. Yeah, go ahead.
Aww.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I'm gonna make a
funny face. So this is what I'm getting at.
Okay. Get to the point, Ray.
I'm getting to the point. So you got to think you have all these people that went over to the South Pacific, experienced that culture, that ultimately probably forever changed them and gave them experiences that they would have never had before. So G.I. Johnny comes back to Omaha, Nebraska. He makes it back, but now he has these stories to tell, these experiences to talk about,
and photos and little tiki trinkets and pennants and oh yeah.
So you got to think loaded. So he's hanging out with his friends that maybe they ended up not going or whatever. Maybe they're just too young or whatever like that. And they're like, look at there was like these, because crazy people are drinking out of pineapples or whatever. And look at these cool shirts and you got to think that influenced other people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
it's like, well, I had no idea what Polynesian culture was at all, but since my friend came back from World War II, now I have an interest in it.
So, and here's the beautiful thing.
Am I right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They have photos. They send photos to their parents, to their friends. They photos of beautiful exotic girls, that they're posing with, like, hey, look at my girl.
Yeah.
Look at it. Yeah. And so, and then they come back, and it's the end of the war, and all of a sudden, skirts are getting longer. You're talking about people are celebrating. There's like a need for color and for flavor, and what in your mind can come of this? All of a sudden, aviation is just launched 20 years into the future.
Wow.
Because we have all of this technology now. We've been developing, we've been trying to go out and make planes faster, better, and then we're in the jet era, and it's the 50s. And all of a sudden you have beautiful travel brochures telling you, go back to this paradise, and finally enjoy it. It's bam! Tiki explodes in that regards. It's not just a dream on the radio anymore.
Yeah.
It's a reality in the mind of man that now have these children that are back into business, that have some money. The economy is finally readjusting post-war and really blossoming.
Yeah.
And there's a flair and a taste for extravagance, and that all of that fanciness that Tiki can offer.
Do you what year did Hawaii become a state then?
In the 50s.
In the 50s.
In the 50s, towards the end of the 50s, we had 2 stars to our flag.
Yeah. Do you think say World War II never happened, or say Pearl Harbor never got bombed? Do you think Hawaii would have became a state?
That's a complicated question. So you're talking hypothetically if Japan had never.
Yeah, like say there was never any, like say we never went to war with Japan. There was no conflict over in the South Pacific. Hawaii was still an American territory. Would it remain as territory, or do you think it would have became a state anyway?
I think it probably would have eventually, as commercialism would have taken over. A lot of the conflict with Japan had to do with trade routes being blocked, and some type of economically trying to go ahead and strong arm another country. So no doubt that Hawaii was already very instrumental. Like I told you, in the Spanish American War, we used it and it became a territory because of the fact that but Hawaii and Alaska were both very touched by the war.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking in Alaska, you're talking about the Aleutian, and you're talking about the territory that actually did see Japanese attacks as well.
Yeah.
And, coincidentally enough, after the war, they now become states.
It's all connected.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
War is an industry machine as well, and I think that for as ugly as it is, it does propulse things quite fast and there's things that comes out of, shifting the gear on human condition all the time, and this is one of the ugly parts of shifting the gear here.
Yeah, you're right. And
it's grinding a couple of gears.
Yeah, right. You're absolutely right. Well, I think about just I was saying, like all these GIs came back from the South Pacific. Now they have an interest in Polynesian or like that kind of culture, and obviously there was a giant boom in all the tiki bars and all places that opened up.
Yeah.
But you got to think, say hypothetically, if they never went to war, like say there was always an interest in the Polynesian, but it was very, very limited to the rich.
Yeah, when do you hit mainstream? I guess that's the question.
Yeah.
How do you go ahead and you launch this onto people? And I'm sure that eventually television, as it was blossoming, and other means would have, but you're not just talking about the GI, you're talking about the silver screen all of a sudden.
Oh yeah.
You have these access to these faraway land, and you can actually see them and visualize them as they are. And I definitely don't think that the tiki culture would be what it is today.
No.
Without the war running its course. So
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Well, thank you, Sammie, for being on my show. And
you're most welcome.
Yeah. Well, aloha, mahalo, and good night.
It's from the future.
Is it really?
Yes.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
So when you finish your job here, is that what you say when you get in your car? Well, Back to the Future. Hi everyone, this is Ray, or some of you might know me as Tiki with Ray, and today I am in Kirkland, Washington, at a place called the Warfront, and I'm here with my friend Sammie.
Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Do you want to do that again?
No.
Okay.
Okay, let's start this again, because I am gotten completely lost in my explanation here. Let's do this.
You want to start from the very, very beginning?
Oh, let's redo it. Fuck it. Let's go live.
It's live anyway. You want to take it from the top?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, let's do that.
Hi everyone, this is Ray, or some of you might know me as Tiki with Ray, and Sammie fucked up the first intro, so now we're going to do this again. Hey gang, this is Tiki with Ray, and I just want to say thank you very much for checking out my video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to see more episodes, click on the subscribe button. And if you liked the video, give it a like. That would mean a lot to me. And if you have any comments or suggestions, please leave a comment in the comment section below.